when I said God has a sense of humor. The very first patient, who himself was an alcoholic, who came to me and asked for treatment. He had been writing to me while we were getting the FDA approvals and whatnot, said, I feel strongly I want to take this drug. By the way, he's clean and sober today, and he texts me and we check in.
Amen. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome aboard the Max Afterburner podcast, sponsored, powered, brought to you by the No Fallen Heroes universe. I am incredibly fired up for an in-studio guest. This one's going to blow you away, but I'm going to give a quick debrief before I introduce our guest, who indirectly helped save and change my life. So we're going to get to our incredibly special guest. But I got home late Sunday night from Oregon. We did our first healing retreat for the No Fallen Heroes Foundation in the great state of Oregon with my brother Daniel Carcillo. Beautiful facility called Experience Onward. Some great healing. 30-year law enforcement officer, a Navy corpsman, just some incredible folks. It was a little weird. This was my first retreat where I wasn't allowed to hold space. So in the state of Oregon, unless you're doing the medicine or you're a Oregon-approved facilitator, wait outside. So Daniel and I ended up hiking up Government Peak or some mountain. It was almost like The Revenant with Leonardo, man. Hip deep snow, and that's another story. But very humbled and honored that the mission objective of healing our heroes at home is getting closer. Next week I'm heading up to see Jared and Rising Ridge up in Oklahoma, and I think we have 5 or 7 grant recipients sitting with the medicine up in Oklahoma. So great stuff going on in the No Fallen Heroes universe and in our universe, even with everything bad going on, man. I actually, in the past couple weeks, got tired of seeing me on TV, Fox, Newsmax, News Nation, because of all the aviation mishaps. But remember, folks, because we have a lot more important stuff to talk about. 120, on average, 120 people die every day in motor vehicle accidents in this country. It's more dangerous driving to and from the airport than flying on an airliner. I mean, obviously 120 people aren't dying in this country every day in an airline crash, thank God. But 22 to 44 are taking their own lives in this country, and that group would be veterans. So that's, what a great segue. Just ask me. What a great segue to our guest. Now, I've printed out her biography, and it takes up an entire page. So we're going to go FSU, Miami, Harvard, and we're going to skip all that because we're going to weave through her incredible resume, because when I was getting winged as a naval aviator in '93, this young lady sitting across from me was doing neuroscience and brain disorders and studying all about that stuff. So Dr. Deborah Mash, thank you for joining us in the studio today. Thank you for driving up from Miami.
Glad to be here.
I know it's a different world, so thank you for making the trek up here. It's an honor. It actually, you and I had a beautiful dinner on the beach a month ago, and just what a God moment. You know, they say not to meet your heroes, but you're doing pretty good, man. So I'm honored to have met you and to announce that you're on our advisory board. She joined the No Fallen Heroes advisory board. What I want to do today, Doc, is everybody's clearly who's listening has probably heard my Ibogaine story. They've heard Marcus Luttrell. You know, they've heard all these Ibogaine stories. Today, I want to step through, because you did a great job at dinner. It was so good. I've replayed dinner on our mind a couple times, because as I told my Ibogaine story, you were charting out. You had your Excel sheet in your mind out, and you were doing the math or the science behind it. So let's go through that. So Dr. Mash has been doing Ibogaine since the early 90s, right?
Yes.
Early 90s. That's incredible.
1993 was when I first experienced the powerful transformation of 3 young men who were part of a People Helping People railroad of young people addicted to hard drugs who went over to Amsterdam. And they took the medicine in a not so medically sound setting, but nonetheless there was a physician present, and I had heard about it. I got on an airplane, brought a medical colleague with me, and I stayed up all night, and I saw this transformation. Because of that, I was so excited, and this is over 30 years ago.
Don't remind me.
That I went, I came back and told my colleagues at the university. I told the leadership at the medical school, and I said, we have to test that molecule. This has to be done in a safe setting. We need to learn about it because there's something fundamental that this drug is doing, and we need to understand it. And that led me to the FDA.
1993. That's literally when I got winged as a naval aviator. So it's just incredible that our two paths cross today. Okay. So Ibogaine, for the folks in the audience, what is Ibogaine? So I've sat with Ibogaine, then I sat with Iboga. Give us a quick, let me remind you, I'm a political science major from South Jersey and a knuckle dragging fighter pilot, which, you know, might be average for our listeners. Give us the executive version.
Well, let me correct you right here and now that somebody who flies, who's a fighter pilot, has IQ points sky high, and we all know this. So with that, with that brief introduction to our host.
Thank you.
Yes, Ibogaine is the active molecule from Tabernanthe iboga. So Ibogaine is an indole alkaloid. What does that mean? It means that it's one of Mother Nature's natural medicines that comes out of the root of Tabernanthe iboga. So when people say I've taken Ibogaine, they've probably taken the salt of Ibogaine or Ibogaine hydrochloride, which is a pharmaceutical or a near pharmaceutical grade isolate from the plant itself. There are approximately 12 different alkaloids that are in the roots of mature Tabernanthe iboga, which grows in the region of Gabon and Cameroon. Ibogaine is used, has over 100 years, 100 plus years of ethnobotany, ethnopharmacology behind it. And it actually made its way into the people who were looking for novel medicines. You know, Mother Nature has given us a lot of blockbuster drugs, right? So back before chemistry, modern chemistry, the medicines came into different pharmacies in Europe, primarily, also Asia, medicines from China and the East. And these were then worked up as products, as pharmaceutical products. Ibogaine was one and was marketed in low-dose tablets for 20 years.
French? Was it pharmacy?
In France. In France. And France had these small boutique sort of pharmacies where they could conjure up tinctures and make their own pharmaceutical preps. So that's where Ibogaine was first used as a pharmaceutical. But again, it goes back, there's 100 years of science and ethnobotany, ethnopharmacology.
Centuries, the Boiti and Gabon. And okay, so that's kind of what Ibogaine is. Let's step through a journey, because a lot of folks, like I just said, they listen to the anecdotal stories. That's why I love sitting and talking to you, is because there are folks out there. That's great, veterans, athletes dealing with this stuff. I need somebody with a lab coat and a beaker and to explain what's actually happening. So without repeating mine, just a quick executive summary. The first, I don't know if it's half, maybe you can tell me. The first half to me of my experience was visuals. It was the most, when I got home, I told Susie I never have to travel again, because I literally saw everything. I never knew that my mind or the universe contained so many things or so much beauty, right? So that phase was pretty cool. It was almost, and you know me, I choose to use the word God, but you can use whatever. Something was telling me, like, look at this. Can I cook or what, right? And then a very individualized, I don't know if it was the second half, a very individualized journey was with me and God, and kind of like we're sitting in a movie theater eating popcorn, like, hey, man, your past and everything like that. So talk us through the I don't know if the right word is pharmacology. What happens in an Ibogaine journey from I just swallowed this thing with a cup of water to the next day? To step people through that.
So the way we like to describe Ibogaine is that if you take a large enough dose which would be anywhere from about 800 to 1,000 milligrams, which is a large amount.
Is it? Okay.
Of a pharmaceutical.
Based on weight, like a 200-pound me?
You could do a partial weight based adjustment, but we'll come around safety in a minute, but a safe dose. So when you take a dose that is large enough, you will experience what they call an oniric state. An oniric comes from the Greek word to dream. Mm-hmm. And it is literally like a waking dream state. Mm-hmm. So, the listeners may know, sometimes you've had a lucid dream where you wake up from that lucid dream and you experience this aha moment, like, I was in that state. Yeah. You could kind of feel it, taste it, touch it, and it's vivid and it's lucid. So that lucid experience, depending on how you metabolize the Ibogaine, can last anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. So we know that Ibogaine has complex metabolism. It's metabolized through the liver, as many drugs are. Mm-hmm. And then depending on your status, your liver enzymes, you'll be a fast, intermediate, or slow metabolizer. So you were about probably in what we would call an intermediate metabolizer, having a very profound first half of the experience. Ibogaine gets converted to an active metabolite called noribogaine. When we look at the way the blood, the levels of the drug and the metabolite in the blood, when it gets to that second phase, that's a profound phase of introspection, deep cognitive introspection. And that's very important for understanding the potential benefits of Ibogaine therapy for a variety of mental health and trauma and other addiction related disabilities, and how you can break through that. And that cognitive phase is really where you're turning on windows of neuroplasticity in the brain. So that then will last for many of our patients that were treated with us in the clinic that I founded in St. Kitts, would last through the early parts of the evening. And then some people would get a little bit of sleep, but not too much usually. And then the next morning is that kind of glory day, where people come out of it a little bit tired because you just traveled around the universe and got to do a lot of
true,
therapy on a rapid therapeutic.
Instead of jet lag, it's universe lag.
Universe lag. I like that. Yeah, it's therapeutic jet lag, and you've really crossed a lot of time zones, so you're back, and you're back in your body. And what people would tell us is, wow, I feel great today. What is in me today? And of course, it was that same phenomenon that I saw with young men who were banging back a lot of drugs, hard drugs. And here they were, and, one dose of this molecule, and they were able to come out spun dry, clean, not craving, not jonesing, not looking to go back out and get high. But the more fascinating thing for me was the fact that they were able to sit across the table and talk about what was going to be different in their life.
Amen. They had hope for a future as opposed to what they were living. Wow, that's pretty powerful.
And they could rewrite their own narrative.
Oh, man. What a guy. Yeah. And they had an appetite, right? I remember reading about a bunch of heroin addicts who were like, I can't believe I'm eating breakfast.
That was, I always, maybe it's the DNA of the mother in me, but as soon as people could eat food, I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Full belly, something's going right.
You're looking good, you're eating a big meal, yes.
Yeah.
We're there.
Wow. In between, if it's true, the halves, is it a chemical switch? Is it how's the body know, like, all right, tour complete, buckle up? Tour
complete. I like that too. The tour is completed in a kind of abrupt, but what people have told me, it's abrupt. It's an abrupt.
Wait. Now, real quick, everybody listen to me. People have told her, because this blew me away, but this proves her bona fides. You've never sat with Ibogaine.
I have not.
Because you're studying it, and you want to be a judge, impartial. However, the woman knows her way around psychedelics. I'll let you talk about that if you want. But isn't this incredible? This is what the professionals do, is like, hey, I can't I have to be impartial. If I'm going to be a judge, I got to be neutral. And that's so cool. But you've had other experiences, so we can shoot the shit and relate.
I grew up in that. I grew up and I am experienced in the psychedelic space, and I took LSD when I was a young person, and it was an LSD trip that pulled me out of dark despair when my father died suddenly.
Amen.
At 56. So I understood the power of this. So when this molecule, when I heard about Ibogaine for the first time and it crossed my path, I immediately, went back. My father struggled with alcohol use disorder. He was a very severe alcoholic and a wonderful human being and the love of my life. He was my best friend and my mentor, but I lost him. I lost him at 21. He had a massive heart attack at 56, and he could never, despite his best efforts, everything he did, pray his way out of it, go to church, go to AA meetings, he white-knuckled sobriety, and ultimately it got him. And I think back and how if someone had given my father the medicine, whether it was psilocybin, LSD, Ibogaine, or one of the newer molecules that are being tested clinically today, that this could have saved my father.
Not to go too flowing robes. I think that's why you're sitting here, right? Your dad's working through you right now.
Every day.
Oh God, that's incredible. I love that. Okay. So, Dad, thanks for doing some good with your daughter here. She's doing a great job. Didn't mean to interrupt, but you said abrupt.
It's an abrupt switch.
Switch.
So what's happening is that the Ibogaine, when we're on what we call the ascending limb of the Ibogaine in blood. So you take any medicine, it dissolves, it gets into the bloodstream, and then it starts to act on the body. In this case, the drug acts on the brain, the central nervous system. When you look at the pharmacokinetics, the clearance and metabolism of Ibogaine in the blood, we can set our watch. We know exactly how long the vision is going to be and when it clicks over to the deep phase of cognitive introspection. And that is when the noribogaine, when the active metabolite of Ibogaine becomes the higher in the blood. So when that hits its max, the show changes.
Wow. So Ibogaine to neuroibogaine in a journey. That's the switch.
That's the switch.
That's so funny, man, because literally after the tour, I'm in space. And I'm like, not scary space. It was cool space. I'm like, all right. And then that's when, as I told you at dinner, that white light just was right there. And I'm like, okay. Oh, shit, here we go. And then the second half took. Wow. All right, so Ibogaine to neuroibogaine. What's the average? Is it halves? Like I was in the medicine, I'd say 12 to 14 hours. Is it a half or is it like a smaller tour and then a longer noribogaine phase?
Again, it depends on whether you're a it depends on your genetics, actually. So Ibogaine is under genetic regulation. And it goes through a liver enzyme, and you're born with a full complement of that enzyme, or you get half of it from your mom and half of it from your dad,
sure. Okay.
Right? And so if you have a full complement of the enzyme, you're what we would call a fast metabolizer. So people who are fast metabolizers will kind of blow through the visionary phase much quicker. And then you have intermediate, so you have less of that enzyme that converts it to noribogaine, and that's a shorter journey. And then if you're a slow or to what we call a poor metabolizer, you can have a very long journey. And when we worked in St. Kitts on this, I like to say God has a sense of humor. We ended up genotyping our patients, our volunteers in that first round, and we ended up having fast, intermediate, and slow metabolizers. So we were able to set the clock, and we knew immediately, well, the visionary piece is due to the Ibogaine, so that oniric journey, the deep, lucid, waking dream state, the profound dream state, would time out with the resonance time for Ibogaine, but as soon as you got over the hump and you got conversion to noribogaine, then you could see it. And, we had eye shields and headphones on the patients. And these were the people who came to St. Kitts were people who were seeking a way out of their addiction. They were trying to break the cycle of addiction. So these were not healthy people.
Wow.
These were very sick individuals who were going through a detoxification for many of them. So we had a full, medical entourage there to ensure safety at the time, and we were learning from our patients. We were learning from the people who were our volunteers.
You know what then? All right, so this entire podcast is a hero's journey. Let's talk about, not that there's bad, let's talk about the fear porn. People Google Ibogaine, 30 people have died. I'm like, 3,000 people die of from aspirin every year. So the fear porn of 30, and you might know the numbers better than me, 33 or something like that. But in my studies, which is that compared to yours, some of these people showed up like on heroin or drunk to sit with Ibogaine. And we're talking years ago. So can you dispel and you can, if you want to in this question, dig into the cardiac stuff. Can you start shooting down some of the bandits, the Ibogaine bandits that are flying around trying to attack this medicine?
Delighted to do so. And I like your term of art, fear porn. I call it the dark side of Ibogaine.
Mm-hmm. Well, if it bleeds, it leads. We're not going to talk about the thousands of veterans or others who have healed with Ibogaine. We're going to go with these.
This has, I have spent my entire life championing the scientific and medical evidence that Ibogaine can be administered safely.
Amen.
To people. And we know this is true. We know this is true. Mm-hmm. How do we know this? Because we estimate that there's more than 10,000 people that have taken Ibogaine safely. And I believe that number is an underestimate, because I go to the airport, someone will see me and come over to me and go, Dr. Mash, hi, and I don't know who it is. And they go, I took Ibogaine, thank you for your research. Yeah. People send me text messages, phone calls, come on the internet and want to tell me their story. So I know that number is...
So 10's probably a minimum.
Indeed.
Okay.
But the dark side of Ibogaine, the reason that the regulators have slow-tracked it, and the reason that, I believe that there hasn't been the pace of the research didn't accelerate, despite my best efforts today.
We're getting there.
Is that there have been adverse events. And what the adverse event is not always well known, because people take Ibogaine in unsafe settings. Start there. They are desperate. Desperate people will do desperate things. They'll buy something they think is Ibogaine on the internet. There's no certificate of analysis.
Correct.
There's no package insert. You don't know the purity. Somebody dies who shouldn't have taken Ibogaine. Maybe they don't have a healthy heart. Mm-hmm. Maybe they have a condition that would prevent them from being a good candidate for Ibogaine. Well, if they simply had seen a doctor,
Correct.
Had the conversation, not all of us can take every treatment that's available.
Correct. Screening, proper screening.
It's called proper screening. And then risk mitigation. We know that when people who go through detox, alcohol withdrawal syndrome, you can die. You can have a seizure and a sudden death.
Correct.
And there is a case that I've reviewed of a man whose son, he was desperate for daddy to get well. This broke my heart. I cried when I read this, and I was asked to serve as an expert advisor because of the fact that this individual who, had an alcohol-related seizure, he didn't have an adverse event due to Ibogaine. But if you don't know the circumstances, if you don't measure the Ibogaine and the noribogaine in the blood, if you don't know what a person took,
Correct.
They may have other drugs on board. They may have pharmaceutical interactions that could put you at risk. So Ibogaine should be administered by people, by clinicians, and referred for this therapy by people who are knowledgeable of the space. And that's why we need to communicate the safety information.
Correct.
If we're not going to get in front of the FDA, if the NIH is not going to help us by funding these studies, people are seeking out the Ibogaine. They're doing it. This
Correct.
hasn't gone away. 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago, I went to the FDA and had the conversation. The FDA was very, very collaborative. They helped us. They gave us permission to test I went back and spoke to the FDA in 1995. I shared our data from offshore with the FDA. Why were we offshore? Because we couldn't fund it.
Sure. Schedule 1 in the U.S.
You couldn't
We can't raise capital on a Schedule 1.
It was impossible. And then you didn't have patents and whatnot. So, it was always going to be a public-private partnership.
Sure. So proper screening. Yeah, most folks know I went to the Mission Within. Doc Martine, you had to do blood. I did blood work up here, right? Is that to check for liver stuff, or what's the
more than that, actually? So yes, of course, you don't want to have your way elevated liver enzymes, which if somebody is drinking a lot or has a health issue or an infection or something like that, you can have abnormalities in liver enzymes. And again, I mentioned that Ibogaine goes through the liver, and there's a lot of metabolism. So what we think with Ibogaine is that there's the window of safety is more narrow. So if something is off in your body, or you take too much of the drug, for example, or you have a drug-drug interaction, you can get into a blood level that's not going to be safe.
Okay.
Do we know the safe blood level? I believe we do. I believe our research informs that, and I think other work that is being done gives us that information. So as with any drug, you can take too much. Correct. You can have an accidental overdose.
Yeah. Too much of anything is bad. So Martine, the Mission Within did blood work up here, showed up at the retreat center. They did a urinalysis to look for alcohol and drugs. Shall remain nameless. We had somebody go to Ambio. Trevor, popped. They sent him home. Because and you know what? We got into this at dinner, but why? Trevor's words to me were he would have had a painful experience. It was meaning like physical, like if somebody is under the influence of, I think he talking like this, it was booze. He just couldn't, it sucked. Well, so Trevor, he went back again, and Trevor made him come down a week earlier. And they kept an eye on him.
With alcohol, that's smart. And I mentioned...
So what would have happened if you're on booze...
You can't go cold turkey off of booze.
Okay.
Booze, you can go, when you go through opioid withdrawal, right? You're sick. You're vomiting, diarrhea, chills, the cold turkey syndrome, right? You come off alcohol... And if you've been using Xanax or Valium or something like that, which many times alcoholic patients will, buffer out their alcohol withdrawals with taking a Xanax, you're in a black hole. You are not ready for Ibogaine. You are not ready for Ibogaine. So you need to be detoxified and stabilized off of the acute alcohol withdrawal syndrome. And what's important here, what's extremely important here, are your potassium, your magnesium, your calcium in the blood. Okay. These are electrolytes. Okay, people take magnesium supplements. Magnesium is a great friend to Ibogaine. Why? Because it stabilizes the heart. Many people, our listeners right now, you probably have a magnesium deficiency. So you can supplement that just for general health. And I do. I take magnesium, not every day, but I take it regularly. You must have normal magnesium level in the blood. That's extremely important, as well as potassium. And then calcium regulates potassium channels. So you can be at risk if your electrolytes are off. And you take Ibogaine, and Ibogaine acts in the heart. It also doesn't act only in the brain. It also acts on a potassium channel in the heart. Well, that could set you up for an arrhythmia. Okay.
All right. Well, so this is good, folks. Listen to we're knocking down the fear porn right now. So that's why we're doing some blood work beforehand. Doc Martine or whoever takes a look at it to make sure things are looking okay.
You're in the normal range.
You're in the range. Let's move on from the pre-blood work stuff. What about other drugs like Doc or whoever at some of the Ibogaine clinics say they either step people down? Do you have to be 100% clean with Ibogaine? And what's the best thing? Obviously, talk to your doctor, but you step down. Talk us through, like, because I get the question often, hey, Whiz, can I sit with Ibogaine if I'm on X, Y, and Z? I'm like, no. Talk to the doc. I shuffle those questions off to people with more education than me.
So in when we got permission, and our team at the University of Miami at the Miller School of Medicine, and a shout out to the leadership and my chairman in the Department of Neurology and others at the university who really stood behind this and said, this is too important. We need to turn over the stone. And so they were willing to let us go forward.
It's courageous. I appreciate that bravery.
Wow, yes. Yeah. And I look back on it and I'm grateful too. So we couldn't raise the money. I couldn't get the person who held the patents at the time, Howard Lutzoff, who made the seminal discovery. He didn't have the money to finance it. You're going to run clinical trials in an academic medical center, you got to pony up the dollars. Yeah. And people were donating. I mean, we were all donating our time and effort, but we still had to pay for the hospital beds and whatnot.
It's not free.
And there were costs. And you had to do the cardiology and the labs and, all the screening, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. So what I did was go offshore, and we went with family and friends, putting in money. We set up, it got the first government-approved psychedelic medical center in the Caribbean, in the island of St. Kitts. The Prime Minister himself, a medical doctor, and I had a wonderful clinician scientist by the name of Dr. Frank Irvin, who was our clinical director, and we assembled a medical team, and we were learning. This was on the ground. The reason I bring this up is because we were using Ibogaine in that setting to detoxify active addiction. So we had patients who were coming in. Most of our patients were coming off of opioids or methadone. So they were using heroin or methadone at the time, or prescription opioids. And we also had many cocaine-dependent patients. So these were people, it was right at the height of the cocaine epidemic, and people were freebasing cocaine, and that's rough on the heart. Oh, yeah. Think about it.
My God.
Terrible. So we had that. And then, of course, polydrug dependency. We had people who were, using both and speedballing, heroin and cocaine. That's pretty damaging to the body. And I bring this up, and then we had people who were, who had maybe detoxified and gotten halfway off the drugs, but couldn't come all the way off the drugs, and they couldn't make it out the back end, or they did a hospital detox and they felt so darn sick with a protracted withdrawal syndrome that they wanted to do the Ibogaine. So we had a full, kind of a full range of people in various stages. Okay. Again, the reason I bring this up is that we had no deaths. Nobody went to the hospital. Wow. We had no serious cardiac-related emergencies in that population. Why? Because we had cardiologists, and we had emergency room physicians, and we had psychiatrists, and we had a whole, range of medical people who were there to learn, to inform, and to protect our volunteers. And what we figured out early is that people needed to have fluids. If you were freebasing cocaine and you were volume depleted, it dries you out. Yeah. You're beyond a hard crack run, and you come in and take Ibogaine. You're going to have we need to tank you up a little bit before you take the Ibogaine. We learned that. So patients would get the fluids. And I was concerned, one of the things during the visionary experience is we were doing telemetry. So we had patients on cardiac monitor, and we could watch. I'd stay up all night long staring at cardiac monitors. So I learned more cardiology than I ever thought I would learn in my lifetime. Suffice it to say, when you're first when the drug experience is coming on hard, you're in that waking dream state, you can see some changes in heart rates. You can see heart rate variability. And in the cocaine-dependent patients, we saw some drops in heart rates and some drops in blood pressure. Well, you don't really want to see that on the cardiac monitor. So we gave fluids, and then I talked to the cardiologist, and I said, shouldn't we be giving magnesium prophylactically? Because magnesium could protect against what we would call a bradyarrhythmia, or a slow heart rate related arrhythmia. It stabilizes the myocardium, it stabilizes the muscle of the heart. And so we did. We had 2 grams of magnesium before anybody took Ibogaine.
So let me break here real quick to say, God bless Stanford and the study they did, but I'm sitting across from somebody who kind of knew what they just talked about recently. Maybe we should give these Navy SEALs magnesium to protect them. And it was like breaking news, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure. Okay.
Well, I'm glad they did.
Exactly. No, we're one team, one fight.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely sharing best practices. And
Correct.
It's been I feel very strongly that, I have a responsibility to inform the safe use of Ibogaine. This is not about me.
It ain't competition, it's cooperation.
100%.
Especially saving lives.
This is life and, exactly.
Correct.
This is life and death.
Wow. Yeah, but it's funny. I'll be honest. I read that whole Stanford study. I'm like, I thought I read over in this one that this was done a while ago, but we can pretend it's new.
And it makes medical sense, because anybody who's a cardiologist would understand this, and
True.
It's part of the ACLS protocol. So every EMS person knows this. It's common. It's what we would call common knowledge.
So, knocked down a lot of the fear porn, which is great. When I was at the Mission Within, I was on an EKG throughout the night. They had run an IV just in case anything happened. Doc said that there was this older Mexican guy. He was a cardiologist. He's like, he just sleeps downstairs throughout the night. God forbid anything happens. So it sounds like we've kind of knocked down most of the fear porn.
There's nothing. What I have worked with, and I'm bragging now, but I'm going to say it. I have worked with the best cardiologists in the world. I have spoken to the leaders in the field. I have spoken to ex-heads at the FDA, and they all tell me the same thing. What has been reported for Ibogaine is a treatable event.
Done. Mic drop, right? So done with the heart fear porn. And again, if you have any pre-existing massive heart stuff, you're gonna screen that out. You're not gonna. You should not get.
We're gonna help you another way.
Hey, there we go. Amen.
There are other safer psychedelics that you can use.
Help you another way. Let me give you one. Let's ask one more question in the fear porn area here. History of the stuff better than I. Mental issues or schizophrenia. I defer those to the docs. Like if you have a history in your family of it, or you have some, and for lack of a better word, mental issues, can you sit with Ibogaine? Because doc has, he's like, Whiz, it's not necessarily a mandatory no. We have to do some more digging or stuff like that. So if people are like, hey, I have XYZ mental issues, talk to us about that stuff.
I would not recommend Ibogaine for a patient who has a diagnosis
bipolar,
schizophrenia. Bipolar patients, again, the people that came through St. Kitts, we did full psychiatric screening on them. We had 2 psychiatrists who worked with us, and we had addiction medicine doctors. So we did a full psychiatric panel. So we knew every one of our subjects, whether or not they had been diagnosed, treated, carried risk, family, et cetera, et cetera. If you had a diagnosis of schizophrenia, you were not invited to participate.
This isn't unique to Ibogaine, though. I hear this about psilocybin or any psychedelic.
No, you would put someone in harm's way. You don't put somebody in harm's way.
Do no harm. Step 1, right? Let's not do any of that stuff.
No, that's not necessary.
Okay.
That's not necessary.
We can help you other ways.
Yes, we're not going to leave you. We're going to not leave you alone. We're going to direct you to something else.
And real quick, folks, on this point, there are so many different healing modalities. Before I found Ibogaine found me, I'll say that I started doing hot yoga, and I was like, I'd kick my own ass if I saw me doing a downward dog. Instructors like, you do breath work, don't you, or meditation? I'm like, I can't sit still for 30 seconds. Yoga to breath work and meditation, and then the medicine family. So there are so many different healing modalities. Ibogaine is a tool in the kit. So again, folks, you don't. Okay, Now, any other fear porn stuff that I missed? Or?
Well, let's go back to the psychiatry. So many of the people who came through our program in St. Kitts, and there were 287 people who were dosed with Ibogaine for primarily, again, as I said, addictions.
That's a healthy. Is that a healthy number?
It's the largest number that anyone.
I was going to say, yeah. I'm like, that sounds like a lot of people.
It is,
okay.
And. I closed that program down. I actually believe it's some of the best work I've ever done in my life, and I'm grateful to God that I had that experience. And I still get,
amen.
Yeah, and I still get flowers on Mother's Day from people who came down to St. Kitts. So it means the world to me. However, is psychiatry. Many of the people who were opioid dependent patients who were kicking opioids, heroin, getting off of tapering off of methadone fully, prescription opiates, whatever. About half of them would meet criteria for clinical depression. Not a surprise. Okay. Many of them also suffered from generalized anxiety disorder. With our stimulant abusers, interestingly, we had a high percentage of them with ADHD, attention deficit disorder. Mm-hmm. We had many of them who were bipolars. It makes sense. You like the manic high, you're going to love cocaine.
Yeah.
You're going to go up, you're going to go down. So we had a fair percentage of them. And with bipolar disorder, you can have like a psychotic mania. So we would screen those patients, but we never had an adverse psychiatric event in St. Kitts. And these were people at risk.
Perfect. That would be the demographic. That would be the demographic.
Very good.
See some...
Very good, Dr. Buckley.
Yeah. I don't play doctor on TV. Okay, that's good. So I think we cleaned up most of the fear porn or anything like that.
And the other is what you will hear, a very rare condition, which is called hallucinogen persisting disorder. And this is
This is a new one for me.
Well, that's out there, and it goes all the way back to the early days of LSD, where people, after the drug is long gone out of the body, that people will endorse still having, some psychedelic residue.
Floaters or something?
Psychedelic residue. But we never, ever had a report of that in our study.
Okay. Can happen, but rare or extremely rare.
And we didn't see it. And most people will contact me frequently if there's something goes wrong with Ibogaine. They'll come to me, a family member or whatever, and say, I want to discuss what our experience was.
Okay.
I have not heard it.
All right. Well, I think we checked all those off then. Let's go to a couple other things. Personally for me, like you and I talked about, drinker. Can't be a good drinker. I was a bad drinker. Just not. And I don't think at least for me, I didn't recognize it until this, right? Yes. So let's talk through that. Wait, you know what? Before I talk through that, I meant when you were talking about how long somebody's in the medicine. Is it longer if somebody needs more work? That's not the question. Let me give you the pre. I told you I went with Robert Gallery. He was a linebacker, All-American at Iowa, played for the Raiders. And as you know, they don't know if you have CTE until when you're dead. And they cut your melon open. But I was in the medicine for like 12 to 14 hours, and he was down, man. And the other four of us were downstairs, and I could tell Doc Martin knew we were worried. We kept looking upstairs and they kept reassuring us that the medicine had a lot of work to do. If you have, folks with traumatic brain injury or maybe these athletes, is it a longer journey? Because, to use their words, the medicine has more work to do. Why do you think somebody is down longer in your experience? Did the medicine have more work to do, or? Well,
we don't know. First of all, I'm a scientist, so that's phenomenology.
I know, yeah, I figured.
That's kind of phenomenology.
That's little flowing robes.
Yeah, a lot of our people in St. Kitts had head trauma. We did have some veterans down there too. So people were in car accidents, people broke their backs and had trauma. Okay. So, we had traumatic brain injury in our cohort too. Mm-hmm. All right. I don't believe that that's the case.
Okay.
I believe that
it sounded good. It made me feel better.
And you do not know exactly how much of the drug they gave them, or if they only gave him one dose, or if they gave him a second dose and he was down longer than some of the other people who were being treated because they upped the dose, or if he was a fast metabolizer and then they came back around and gave him a second dose. One of the things that some of the clinics will do, which I've suggested is not a great idea, is to stack doses. Ibogaine is not a drug that you want to give multiple doses. That can get you into trouble because of the complicated metabolism, not knowing the genotype of the patient, not knowing are you genetically a fast, slow, intermediate. Without that information up front, that's not a great idea. So it could have been that, multiple things. One, he could have arrived there and been very tired.
True.
It could have, been hard on his body. And they needed to watch him a little bit longer and not get him up. I mean, if somebody's a very slow metabolizer, and that's the other thing, if he could have been a slow metabolizer, and he just stayed in the zone for a lot longer. We had that. The very first, when I said God has a sense of humor, the very first patient who himself was an alcoholic, who came to me and asked for treatment. He had been writing to me while we were getting the FDA approvals and whatnot, said, I feel strongly I want to take this drug. By the way, he's clean and sober today, and he texts me and we check in.
Amen. I love it.
I do too. And he was down, way into the evening. And our psychiatrists and doctors were there, and the other people were coming around, and, they were up and eating and everything, and he's still down. And I was like, uh-oh. And we got him up because we were doing neurologic checks as well, and he still was ataxic. He was wobbly on his feet and whatnot. When we did the genetics, he was a poor metabolizer.
All right. Well, you got the math and science answer. I'll stick with the medicine had a lot of work to do. Like we talked about at dinner, it's so cool to have you, because we have all these anecdotal stories. And I call it a bridge, right? Here's all the cool stories of healing and lives being saved. Then we have the other side of the bridge with you all, with the beakers and the lab coats and the studies. And it's really cool to see if the bridge is ever, I personally think God's right in the middle of that bridge, but if we can get there.
All knowledge is in the mind of God. I don't have any problem with that. The more I learn, the less I know. Isn't
that fun? I'm the same way. The more science I dig into, the closer I actually get to source. But other people are like, the further it gets away, I'm like, all right, well, I guess we'll all find out someday. Alcohol, before we get to the booze, let's do this part of the booze. Alcohol, drinker, not a good drinker. I got done with Ibogaine. We got back to San Diego. We went to a beautiful restaurant in Coronado. I couldn't even look at alcohol.
I love it.
It made me dry heave. I'm like, I can't believe seeing a bottle of vodka, for example, would make me want to retch. Smelling alcohol, I'd throw up a little bit. Coffee, destroyed. Talk to us about addiction. And alcohol and, I feel like a failure. Like when you and I had dinner, I had a couple glasses of wine. But that's a success, because old Whiz, a couple glasses of wine was probably 2 to 3 bottles for me.
Wow.
So now I control it, right? 99.9% of my alcohol is gone. I can have a glass of wine with my steak or my pasta, but it ain't going past that. And I almost do that as a victory. It's almost because to be honest with you, if I have 1 or 2 glasses of wine nowadays, I regret it for 3 days. I'm miserable. I'm like, what am I, 23 again? And I get like a hangover just from a glass of wine. So talk to us, because I know you're doing, and I want to talk about this, you're doing incredible work with your company. We can get into Demorex and stuff, but talk to us about addiction and also what you would call it, or maybe you don't call it anything as a scientist, the golden window or whatever it's called. I felt
that's fabulous
for like,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say at a minimum a month of.
Indeed.
Susie, she's like, why are you hugging the tree in the yard? I'm like, look at it. It's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. So talk to us about those two things. What Ibogaine does for addiction, all kinds of addiction. We've had guys with porn addictions that are like, dude, I can't even.
I'm glad to hear this.
So addictions, and then
that's good too.
Golden window, and tie that into what you're currently doing now with Demorex and the good things we're hearing with that.
Yeah, I never, when I having grown up with addiction, I never wanted to learn about addiction. So I started working on neurodegenerative diseases, which is good because I got into the trauma space with that. So I can think about brain trauma as well as, you know, looking at addiction and more as a neurologic disorder.
I love that.
Thank you.
You're not tough enough.
Oh, no.
Buckle up, buttercup,
no,
you know.
No, buck up. No. And again, you know, seeing a professional man with a family, you know, deeply religious guy who really tried to do everything he could to beat his addiction to alcohol, but he had PTSD. He sustained a major trauma with the death of his brother. Of course, back then, nobody talked about PTSD. Nobody knew what the hell it was.
General Patton slapped soldiers with PTSD, right?
You know, but we didn't. Men were not allowed to have any.
You're a man.
No weakness. We couldn't have that. So, and that's terrible. I mean, my goodness. Looking at addiction. So addiction. Why, if you never use drugs or alcohol, you're not going to get addicted. I watched the movie about President Trump and his brother, Fred. And, you know, I felt deep in my heart for that. And, of course, he made a decision to never drink.
I saw my brother, and my brother told me, don't ever do this.
And his brother, the way they portrayed his brother, he was, you know, he was a pilot and a beautiful man. And, you know, it just seemed like this just wonderful man. And, you know, here he was, and he lost his brother. If you don't pick it up, if you don't take that, you know, and not everybody, people try drugs and then they walk away.
Sure.
And then other people try drugs and something happens.
That's it.
And they accelerate their use. So recreational drugs. Our society, you know, everybody wants to try something. So people are exposed, and Americans love dope. I don't know why. We love, you know, we love the other. Want to try something different. So young people, I worry about young people, of course. I worry about old people too. But you get on this trajectory, and what happens is that some people endorse that they feel better. You know, whether you're self-medicating trauma, PTSD, anxiety, depression, you know, that I could not drink alcohol, probably because I had an aversion to it watching my father. But in my 20s, I got sick from it.
Yeah.
If I drank, I got violently nauseous. So in my 20s, I couldn't drink. I remember in my 30s, the first time that I had a vodka martini that I could drink, and I didn't get sick, and I felt really good. I said, wow, this is how the alcohol feels. People will chase the memory of that high. Yeah. Whether it's that first nicotine, you know, really good nicotine experience, or the vodka martini, or that crack rock, or that
cocaine. Jesus.
Line up that cocaine and booze, you know, and people, you know, liked it. And so it was the likable factor. So the likability, all right, that's why, you know, if you know there's risk in your family and you don't want to play that card hand, okay, it's a choice. What happens next? With repeated use, the addiction circuitry of the brain gets hijacked. So one of the things that we know that is the neurotransmitter dopamine is extremely important. You're a person with what you've done in your life and your accomplishments, you have high dopamine. You know, when you get up there and fly high, your dopamine is literally flying high, and your dopamine is coursing through your brain and your body. Yeah. And you get the reinforcement, but you're also fully engaged, right?
Singularly focused.
Amen. And that's part of drive, motivation, and affect. How you feel, your motivation level, and your ability to be solely focused on an outcome. It's very important. It's part of how we are as human beings. Sure. It's part of our blueprint, our DNA. Drugs, alcohol hijack that blueprint. And now, instead of getting endogenous reinforcers, you know, getting up morning and going I got something to do today, and wow, let's go.
Beautiful sunrise.
Yeah, all of the above, your family, your child, you know, all of a sudden, all of the things that give you joy and make you motivated to live the game, to play the game and play the game well, gets hijacked by drugs and alcohol. So the brain is modified. The normal plasticity of the brain gets hijacked. And it's hard to break that cycle of addiction because once you're in there, good luck. And all of the treatments that are available today, all of the FDA-approved molecules, what have we got? For opioids, you're doing a substitution therapy. It saves lives, but you're replacing, you're still dependent on an opioid. So, you know, again, is that the long term, is that the best we can do as people in the field of addiction medicine and addiction psychiatry? That's really the best we have to offer people.
If that's where we're topping out, we're in a lot of trouble.
I believe so. And that's why I've fought as hard as I have. That's why I've championed these alternative medicines for patients, because we need more tools in the toolbox.
Correct.
So thinking about it being, if your brain is rewired, if that's what's happening, then the Ibogaine opens that window of neuroplasticity. And yes, patients told us they felt amazing the first month out. So there's a very long opening of that window of neuroplasticity. And whatever you're doing, your cognitive state, neurons that wire together, fire together. If you're thinking, hey, I'm sober today, I don't need a drink, I've got things to do, I need to engage with my family. You know, love of God, deep meditation, thank you, God, for giving me this other, you know, opportunity. And you repeat that over and over again. You show up.
Gratitude begets gratitude.
And it also changes your brain state. That's why what we learn from mindfulness and meditation and breath work, all of these things go together with the psychedelic medicines. And it become part of the aftercare plan. And that's why Ibogaine is an addiction interrupter. Ibogaine heals the brain. And then we learned that from the pivotal study of the Stanford group. That's brilliant.
Well, and you can see it, right? You know, one of the SEALs showed me, he's like, dude, look at my brain scans from the VA. And they were like dark and black and gray. And he's like, they almost killed me 3 months later, Whiz. I'm like, why? He's like, they kept zapping me because they thought the machine was broken because it was white. Like his grayness and darkness had gone in his brain scans. That blows me away. Let me ask you, as we're in the alcohol area, to a non-alcohol area, because we're talking about brain stuff. Because people will email or write me, can it help, you know, my mom with Parkinson's or my dad with Alzheimer's? Where are we with Ibogaine and potential other neurological stuff?
Again, I spent, you know, how many years of this in a department of neurology at the University of Miami. So I studied the brain.
That's in like paragraph 90 of your insane resume.
Part of, you know, it's not my first rodeo.
I got you.
So
I got you.
You know, and I had the privilege to study the human brain after death. So we did a lot of work looking at, and I worked with the chronic traumatic encephalopathy group, and I also worked with the VA brain bank. So we, you know,
you stood that up down there, right? Or that's right.
Miami was Miami was one of the nodes, and I worked with that group, and the brilliant work with Matthew Friedman and the launch there, and also the great work done at the NIH. We all got together. This is a great story of collaboration because all of the brain banks got together.
What a noble idea.
What a great idea. That's right. And I was like evangelical when it came to this. You know, you go to somebody and you say, please donate your brain for research. You know, it's not going to help you, but it's going to help your children and your grandchildren, the next generation. So we got a lot of people to help us with that. But what we learned is that, you know, the thought that you're able to reverse trauma, and again, this seminal work coming from Stanford with the group in the neurology department there, and the imaging tools led by Nolan Williams. I mean, this is you know, straight out of the box, first class science and medicine. they're able to demonstrate, he has not published this yet, but I know he's spoken about it publicly, is that he was able to see changes in brain aging with the algorithms that they use in their brain scans.
Wow.
He also demonstrated white matter tracks. This is what you were talking about, the gray and the white.
The brain scan, yeah.
Yes,
okay.
that the white matter tracks looked healthier. And there's a certain type of neuroimaging that's done to look at that. Well, when you think about alcoholism, one of the things that alcohol use disorder does is it damages the brain. We know that. Too much, too much repeated, alcohol in the brain, not a good thing. And that's why there are people who will start to show cognitive changes over time. Can we reverse this? Now, people are extrapolating from that and talking about, Alzheimer's disease. Can you take an Alzheimer patient and reverse that? By the time you're fully diagnosed with end-stage Alzheimer's disease, I really don't think that these are going to have marked benefit. But what about people with mild cognitive impairment? Because MCI, or mild cognitive impairment, not everybody, we tracked people in our brain donor project that had met criteria for MCI, mild cognitive, early signs of, there's something wrong here. Is this going to convert to Alzheimer's disease, or will this stay as a minor form of diminished cognition?
Well, what if it's in your lineage and you start seeing an MCI? Could you do a little preemptive?
Well, people are doing this experiment. They're not doing it in the clinics, and they're not doing it in the treatment centers, and they're not doing it in
putting your lab coat aside and being a human. What do you think? She's like, I don't know if I can put my lab coat aside. Whiz.
No, I do put my lab coat aside. I have nothing to lose at this stage of the game,
True. But if somebody's my parents, my grandparents.
It would depend. All right. So there's always, again, first of all, you would speak to your clinician.
Amen.
What's wrong with that?
Correct.
Have a conversation. Consumers, we're all consumers.
Yeah.
We're all healthcare consumers.
True.
And some of us may want to biohack. And if we do that, we should inform our clinician.
Yeah. Get a brief. Get a tight brief.
I'd have that conversation, because knowledge is power. And if you're going to make a decision, my mother, would I have given psychedelic medicine to my mother if she was in the early stage? I'd be a little bit afraid, because especially with Alzheimer's disease, because patients with full Alzheimer's disease can develop at a middle, early, sometimes even early stage, where they will start having psychiatric adverse events. We don't know today if that will worsen it and make it, more unmanageable. And that, I don't know, that would be a risk that I would have to think about very carefully. Now, if I was diagnosed with that, or I had a genetic risk or something, would I use psychedelics prophylactically to turn on plasticity windows in my brain? I probably would.
That's what I was looking for.
All right. But again, that would be me.
Amen.
Making a decision about me. With Parkinson's disease, I worry about patients. People do reach out to me. I held the Jean C. Levy Chair in Parkinson's disease at the Miller School of Medicine for a number of years. And we studied the brain of Parkinsonian patients and trying to understand why those dopamine neurons die and what can you do. And that's a horrible disease. Horrible disease. Ibogaine for that? I don't think so, because there is what is called the autonomic nervous system will have some of the pathology that's shown in brain in the cells of the autonomic nervous system. So you can have changes in your cardiac functionality. You would have to be really careful.
Okay. Well, you know what? I think it goes to where we are, right? That people are reaching out like, well, if it did all this incredible stuff for them, somebody with Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, maybe. So it's a maybe with some of this. Or there's no formal, you would know this, there's no formal Alzheimer's or Parkinson's Ibogaine studies.
There was a study where they were using a mushroom stack with lion's mane, I believe, vitamin niacin, and psilocybin. And there was, I believe, a trial ongoing, and I don't know today as I'm talking with you what the status is of that, but there was looking at exactly what we were talking about with mild cognitive impairment. Mm-hmm. And that would be very interesting. Again, Big Pharma is not going to fund this. No. They're not going to fund this. So what the companies are
money
doing,
in healing.
Well, it costs, the problem is that to get past the FDA,
true,
you need a lot of money.
Well, Doc, you know as well as I do, if Big Pharma wanted to get something past the FDA, they would. Out at dinner. Did I leave this briefcase full of cash in front of you, FDA Commissioner? I'm saying this, not Dr. Mash.
No, Dr. Mash is not saying
exactly.
That. No. I mean, look, I've gone up in front of the FDA. How many times have I been? And what's nice is they don't tell me to go away.
Well, that's good.
No, they don't. They've been that's why I've always given a little shout out to the FDA, because they didn't lock me out. They could have.
Good.
Because who is this woman coming in here with a psychedelic, and she wants and it was 1990, and she wants to test this in patients, and who is this woman? But they never did that. And I was always very, I reported everything, I had no holdbacks, gave them the information, worked with them collegially, and had them, they would tell me, they said, we want you to do this. I'd go, okay, we'll do that. We want you to do this. Okay, we'll do that. And I reported. We shared the data. And so they were great. When I went back to them recently, and you're not supposed to be able to keep going back to them over time. And I'm sure that when they get a letter from me, they're like, oh my God, she's not dead. Here she is again. But we went back and talked to them about noribogaine, because noribogaine doesn't have the psychedelic effects of ibogaine.
Precisely.
But what we believe is that it mediates the neuroplastogen effects of ibogaine, which is why noribogaine sticks around in the body longer than the ibogaine, and may be part of the reason why the window stays open as long as it does. So I had always said, wouldn't it be marvelous if we could have patients have access to psychedelic medicine, to the journey with ibogaine in a safe and loving, supportive environment where they've been fully screened and under medical monitor so nothing goes wrong, and then to be able to follow patients in the days to weeks after the ibogaine with a low-dose formulation of noribogaine in a pill patch or a depot. What would our numbers look like for those patients?
Well, and I think the folks that are at home, like, hey, man, I don't know if I'm up for, even though you got a beautiful tour, I'm not up for that. So you can.
This is true.
I'm a little torn, Doc. I'll be honest with you. You know me, 100% honest. Taking the psychedelic out of psychedelic. But if it's going to help somebody who, for whatever reasons, like, man, I don't think I can handle that, why wouldn't we do that, right? So I'm a 50-50, but, maybe 60-40.
The way I like to say it, and I learned this from a colleague at a brilliant colleague at Worldwide Clinical Trials, and I took it, and it's now my mantra. Do you need the trip to reach the destination?
I'm stealing that as of right now from you.
There you go.
It's a Ponzi scheme. I love that.
Do you need and that's our mantra at Demorex, do you need the trip to reach the destination?
Wow. Okay.
When I first started working with ibogaine, and again, being the white coat person and, the kind of, we're going to do this correctly. I argued for this, that because we knew that noribogaine was devoid, we believed, based on the data that we had, the observational open label data that we had, that ibogaine did not have the psychedelic effects, that they were mediated by the ibogaine. So we immediately I said, okay, we're not going to work on ibogaine anymore. We're going to just focus on the noribogaine, and we will work it up as a pharmaceutical, and we will speak to the pharma industry, and we will get a joint venture, and we will go fast. All right? Here I am. The people that worked with the patients, our psychologists, would look me in the eye and go, no, Dr. Mash. No. Because the experience for some patients, not all, but for most, was profound. And, again, if a patient, I think that I'm amazed when I talk to people and I tell people what I do, There are many people who will do exactly what you said, who will say to me, I can't take that.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. I'm not going and having a psychedelic mushroom experience. I'm not going to.
Correct.
Ibogaine, what? No.
Yeah.
So they're afraid. They're afraid for a lot of reasons. One, because it's not medically an approved drug. We'll start there.
Step one.
Yeah, step one. It comes from the underground. It doesn't come from there isn't the literature and the legacy of safety.
Yeah. When I Google it, I get 30 people died in
No, it's
decades.
I fought this.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a hurdle that should have stopped us in our tracks, and it's definitely slow tracked the entire program. But there are people who say, I have children, I can't take time out, but who's going to watch my kids?
Can't go to Mexico for 5 days. I work
and not only that, it's the idea of being out of control. That you're in a state where you're. It's what's going to happen to me when I'm under.
I was in a one-man luge for 14 hours.
But your personality is someone who is fearless. You are a fearless human being, and this was an important step for you.
But I'm a control freak, man, right?
You are?
I have to land aboard a boat, fly a fighter jet, right?
God showed you that one.
I am not in control, by the way. There's somebody else.
Yeah.
What's funny, Doc, is those people might not want all of that stuff. That's what I needed. God gave the medicine, and God gave me exactly what I needed. I needed that whole. It was a court case. It was a
life review. You had full. I like to say you had the full tilt Ibogaine.
Oh yeah,
yes.
But I can obviously sympathize for people who were like, "Oh my God, man, that's Morgan Luttrell, now congressman, Whiz, that was the best ass kicking of my life, but I don't want to do it again."
Well, we love that, and in fact, we asked our patients. We did a what was called an elicitation narrative, and this is in my 2018 publication. We asked patients to narrate their journey, and we did a elicitation narrative, and we transcribed it, and then we looked for commonality. One of the things that we did, and the things that came up, sort of the top things, people got back their self-control. They experienced God. There was a lot of spiritual content to the journey. Not for everybody, but quite a large percentage. People felt that it benefited their addiction disorder. We asked them, you think this helped you? Oh, yeah, this helped me. So that was all exciting. But we also said, are you willing to do this again?
Nope.
Oh, no. So this doesn't have what we call abuse liability.
No.
Nobody's going to go out there and abuse Ibogaine. This is not a party drug. This is not a rave scene. This is not something. You can't even walk.
Correct.
So, it is.
I was a giraffe on roller skates, man. I could barely make it to the head.
Exactly. And I held grown men up so they didn't fall down.
God bless the nurses at the Mission Within, man.
Well, I did some of that too. And it was funny because I remember one man I was helping, and I'm a small person, and he was a big guy, and I'm holding him around his waist to have him not fall down, and so he could go to the bathroom, could urinate, and he goes, "Is that Dr. Mash?" I said, "Don't worry about it."
Jesus. I'm here for you. Support. Oh my gosh, it's too funny.
For grown men, I mean, this is, what I'm saying.
Yeah. All right, so we need to get Dr. Mash back to Miami, and if she sits in Miami traffic, she's going to have me executed. But a couple things I want to wrap up with. The reason you've been able to go back to the FDA, in my opinion, after my sister was killed by a drunk driver, and I carried that trauma for years, she was in my cockpit, man. There were nights trying to land aboard the boat where she was my guardian angel. That was your father. Your father is your wingman. So your old man's with you. I think that's why the FDA is like, you know what? This woman's got spirit in her. So God bless you for that. And God bless your father and my sister. Take us out on a high note with Demorex. Obviously, since you run the place, you know what you can say and cannot say, but can you give us, what are your cliff notes that you're doing right now? What do we have to look forward to? Give us the intel brief on Demorex and what you're doing, as much as you can.
So just very quickly, Demorex is a clinical stage drug development company developing next generation molecules with Ibogaine as the lead molecule.
Amen.
And our noribogaine is clinical stage. We just completed what is called a multiple ascending dose study in healthy volunteers. And this is a critical trial that allows us to select our target dose, a safe dose for efficacy trials, and we are going to be working towards a study, an alcohol interaction study, and we're developing it for alcohol use disorder.
Wow! And this is the first. You're the lead ship, so to speak.
This is the first.
You're blazing a path.
And I'm excited and humbled as I sit here and talk to your listeners that we just had what is called a hard data lock last week. And I'm super excited about it because I believe that as we come out of the unblinding phase of our study, that we'll be able to report top line information in the next few months regarding this and work fast. That we have no time to waste.
Correct.
We need to pick up the pace of these medicines, and I really believe that with the work that you're doing and the endorsement from brave people who have gone offshore, sat with the medicine, and are providing these incredible testimonials, not only about safety. I've taken the drug and I'm here to tell you about it.
Correct.
Okay. Again, getting rid of the dark side of the Ibogaine, but to understand the collaboration, and this is being driven by people like yourself who are, a citizen scientist. And you are.
Add that to my resume.
You add that to your resume because all of you are working together to collect information, to provide the information, and to educate the public, and you're really doing the work of that a clinician should be doing. You're guiding people for treatment, safely.
Amen.
And taking them out the other side of the experience and guiding them towards what do they need to do to ensure a successful outcome. Correct.
This is the way, Doc, isn't it? Right?
It is.
It is.
We need all hands on deck.
Isn't that the truth, man? I shared this at dinner with you, and folks have heard me say this before, but congressmen who shall remain nameless in D.C., Whiz, I love what you're doing. You're going to have a problem with the big pharma and the alcohol and tobacco folks. I'm like, ain't that your job? When you talk, I'm going to have a problem. So I call it the world's greatest Ponzi scheme. You get in, you put the mask on yourself first, you heal, and you get home and you say, man, there's a lot of hurting people and they could use this help. So, Doc, thank you. Thank God for you. Thank God for the work you're doing. It full circle. My mom and dad putting the wings of gold on my chest in 1993, and who knew that you were out there and our paths would cross. Well,
you're the next generation.
Amen. Come on, we're about the same age. Don't give me a next generation crap,
no, we're not.
Our children.
No, we're not. But okay. You know what?
Well, keep up the good work, clearly.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm going down swinging. This is something that I feel very strongly about. And we all need to work together. Again, it has to be a public-private partnership because, and I think when we build it, others will come.
Amen. Jeez, on that. And you know what's funny, Doc, is here in this afternoon. What's his name? The guy, the Gabon. I have a call with, God, it just flew out of my head. Stephen, the Gabon Beast, Stefan Lasmi. He was an NBA player, and he's like, they call him the Gabon Beast because we might go shoot our docuseries starting in Gabon to look at the, the beauty and the tradition of Iboga. But it's absolutely incredible that a medicine that's been used for thousands and thousands of years is here in the States, mainly due to your efforts. And again, thank God for you, all the work that you're doing.
Well, we give credit to the plant.
Amen. Isn't that the truth?
That's the truth.
Man, if I had heard me 5 years ago giving credit to a plant, I would have taken my own lunch money.
And me too. I mean, I would never get up in front of a scientific meeting and say, and of course, I thank my colleagues and, Mother Iboga.
And the plant. And Iboga.
And the plant. There you go.
I would have been booed out of the place, but you're not, right?
No, I'm still standing.
A lot of people, this is the way. Dr. Deborah Mash, ladies and gentlemen, she's on our advisory board now, the No Fallen Heroes Foundation, down in Miami at the University of Miami Medical School, and just everywhere. Thank you for the work you're doing. I expect to be hearing good things. We're going to talk offline because I'd love to invest in the company because I see the promise in what you're doing and ending alcohol use disorder, and then using that to build other bridges.
There will be other bridges.
Exactly. That's just the lead ship.
Thank you so much.
You got it. Doc, thank you so much. She's incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great rest of your day. Happy hunting. Make sure you're hedged. Fights on. Namaste. And as the Bawidi would say, Basi Basi. Whiz and Doc out.